was very excited to introduce our speaker for today. She's a friend, and her name is Brehan Corveau. Is that what's
Brehan. Yeah.
Brehan Corveau. Got the Corveau right. She's someone who will help us understand things to do at our end of life. The official title is an End-of-Life Doula, but she'll be explaining how there's so much more than just that. She's going to highlight topics like home-based funerals, bedside vigil plans, and documenting your end-of-life wishes. I mean, that's so important, and we don't even think about that. It's kind of like, you don't think about death, and it's really important, especially for your family members, to know what you want. She's also going to explore the Nine Contemplations, which is a guide. The practice was explored by Atisha, an 11th century Buddhist scholar, and again by social activist Roshi Joan Halifax. These contemplations are meant to arouse awareness as we reflect on how we are living our life now. Brehan is she, her. She's a deathcare educator. That's a better title, I think. Yeah, people understand that better than end-of-life doula. Her interest stems from her desire to assist others in actualizing their end-of-life wishes by promoting open and honest conversations about living, death, dying, and other life transitions. She's a volunteer at Providence with No One Dies Alone and the Hospice of Anchorage. A few volunteers here too. Kim and I. She has practiced in the field of public health for over 20 years and weaves her yogic background, particularly yoga nidra, into the sacredness of this tender time. And she has a website, which was put down on the Wednesday email if anybody got that. Okay. Thank you, Brehan.
I'm really excited to be here, and I see so many familiar faces. So, yeah, I know, too, just like going forward that, like I'm not the expert on this, and a lot of people in this space have had a lot of experiences that, this is what we draw from. And so I'm just going to start by asking a few of these questions. And I've got a lot of information and kind of just to see how this goes and maybe get some dialogue and have it be a little bit more dynamic up front and then before we go into these contemplations. So just my little bag of tricks, I have this, it's called the death deck. And it's great that, so I pulled a few of these questions from this, and a lot of people have a difficult time starting these conversations with people, or it never feels like the right time, and so, just having something like this out can help get that conversation started with people. So I have a few of these, and I know there's way more than A, B, or C and 3 right answers or preferences, so I'll just read it, and if you think A, you're like, oh, okay, raise my hand. B, all right, so the first one, so would you consider going old school and have a funeral in your home? Like A, nope, there's a reason funeral homes were invented. And B, yeah, if the service involves an urn, no, if there's a casket. Or C, totally, sounds like a warmer, more personal goodbye. So, C, yeah, like that. So I pulled these for a reason, just so thinking of like home funerals. All right, next question about like final disposition. That's a term. Which of these eco-friendly burial options would you consider for your remains? A, it's called like, there's a lot of words 4 different things. So I'm just gonna say them, like recomposition, aka human composting, body composting, natural organic reduction. There's a lot of words for this one. So that's A.
What is that?
Yeah, right? We don't have this as an option in Alaska. I'll be like, yet. Because I know a lot of people want these things when we hear about them. And that's what I want to do today is just, I'm not telling you one way to do a thing or not. And it's just like, here's all these different options. Because I got into this because I'm like, this is what I want for myself. And these are the conversations I want to have. This is what I want to know about. I never knew about certain things. And so, yeah, just knowing what options are out there. So there's a place in Washington that does this. There's others. And so when we die, our body would be covered in just different composting materials and natural earth and dirt and other items that help decompose the body so that we could be left, if we wanted to have like cremains or our remains, similar to what you get back to when there's like a cremation. Or it would just be, it could happen in the earth, it could happen in a vessel. So just kind of like naturally reduce with like temperature and different organic materials. Yeah. And then there's one like aquamation. That's like an alkaline hydrolysis where instead of flame, it would be water going over the body. We're left with the bones or the remains, and it'd be similar to like flame cremation with what we receive back. So that's B. Or C, green burial. I know I'll put a plug in for Alaska's natural burial, trying to have this option available to folks in town, like biodegradable caskets, shrouds, containers, or urns, and there'd be no embalming involved. So still a green burial, aquamation, recomposition.
It's aquamation.
Yeah.
Do they have that here?
No.
We do for pets.
We do for pets,
We
yeah.
do for pets, so we're close. We're close.
Well, who knows how close we are.
I think we're closer.
So another plug, Alaska Flameless Cremation Services, Rachel, a friend of mine, she'll work with us and provide that service for our animals, for that alkaline hydrolysis. So there's somebody offering that for our pets. So those, discussing like what we might want for our final disposition. Okay, so I've got 3 more questions. Would there be differences in how your family members would treat your medical condition if you couldn't speak for yourself? So I'm like, no, I've been really clear with my instructions. B, they would argue but ultimately agree. I don't even know how that could happen because I don't think everybody ends up on the same page nicely. Like marriages, death, divorce, birth, it can bring out some crazies. Yes, they struggle with choosing a restaurant. And a little stat here of, 92% of us believe that it's important to discuss our end-of-life wishes, and only 32% of us have actually done so. So while we know that this is important, it's difficult for people to have these conversations or know when the right time is or how to even start it or when. And so, like us knowing the care that we want and that we don't want at the end of life, or if we're unable to speak for ourselves, maybe due to an accident for an amount of time. Okay, making a video of yourself to be played after you've died is on my to-do list. Something I would only consider doing if terminally ill or getting up in years. Or C, creepy, sad, and downright depressing. So making these videos, so we would call that like a legacy, leaving a legacy, or just kind of thinking ahead. What keeps you from talking about death more? There's a lot of reasons. Anxiety and worry about my own demise. It stirs up too much grief from prior losses. Or, for some of us, we're like, nothing, I can accept and talk about it pretty openly. But then it depends on also who we're with. It's easier to talk about it with people who talk about it regularly. Okay, so I pulled a few of these because some of these highlight I'll call them like offerings or services, like an end-of-life doula or someone like me would provide for folks. So Laurel said, my name is Bree, and I like the term like a deathcare educator or someone who helps just facilitate these conversations. I find that it could be easier when it's maybe somebody outside of the family or they're a tight circle to help just like facilitate. A lot of times, when I get these calls, what I first wanted to do was I want to help people with home-based funerals. This is what I'm really interested in. And that's not what other folks are interested in. The phone is not ringing off the hook to get a stranger at the most intimate time in someone's life to invite them in and to now just say, like, let's do something that, maybe I've never heard of or that I know is even possible or legal. A lot of times folks are calling because they're the caregiver and they really just need support, and it's really someone to listen to them who wants to talk about this because they're the ones who are providing this care, who are dealing with this day in and day out, even years after someone has passed, maybe dealing with the estate or finances. And so just someone who really kind of needs the break or someone to listen. So I started, so it's like an end-of-life doula. I would say, all right, providing like this care, support, and education to others, or like transitioning or companioning others through these life transitions. And so I've always been interested in working with people or just like being around people during end of life. But that would be like when it's planned, or it doesn't always happen like that when we are able to die when we're old and it's planned, and we've had time to say goodbyes, and we've dealt with our own emotions and have given forgiveness, and it's like we can all talk about it. Sometimes it's very sudden and it could be violent, and we don't always get these goodbyes. But I've been up here for 18 years. Before this, I was in DC where I got my master's in public health. I've always been interested in, I find this to be, it's a public health issue, and while I was getting my degree, I worked with folks who have Alzheimer's and an adult day center, so providing services and relief to caregivers, just offering day services to people in the community. And like Laurel said, volunteering in the community. I've got a hospice companion that I've been paired up with for over 1.5 years now, who keeps me very active and who is a volunteer herself as part of her care. Some of us here, sit at the bedside. Providence has a program. It's called No One Dies Alone, and so there can be different reasons why someone does not have someone next to them at the end of life. Maybe their family members are, out of state or just unable to be with them. Maybe there's an estrangement, whatever it is. They are able to call on a group of volunteers to sign up and just be at this like bedside vigil throughout, well, to have somebody with this person so that they aren't alone. And any questions right now?
Thank you for asking.
Okay.
How's the No One Dies Alone program been for you and helped you evolve as an end-of-life educator?
Yeah. So I started with, alright, so I looked this up and I saw that there's trainings to become an end-of-life doula. And so I went through the program. University of Vermont, their med school has this 9-week certificate program. It's online and live every weekend. So after that finished, then I got my certificate as an end-of-life doula. And I'm like, okay, what does this mean without any experience? And I was like, I think I need to go upstream here. I've got some education and now I found my interests or maybe some strengths of how I want to work with people. And so then started with NODA. And then
What is that?
so that No One Dies Alone through Providence. And my experiences, these are my experiences there. We're called in at the final hours or days to be with someone, and there isn't communication. It looks like somebody is sleeping, and I wanted to create more of a connection with people, and so then I started to volunteer through Hospice of Anchorage, and have created that. And so, it's like each of these kind of offer their own different timeline in this path on our journeys. When I try to compartmentalize this, it's like this before death, during the dying process, and after death. And that what I would offer is this before death is, having these conversations, some of these words that stick out. It's planning, educating, we're documenting, we're having these conversations, we're gonna reflect on what the care that we want and don't want at the end of life. That final product would look like having our advance directive in place. And so who here has an advance directive? Yay, good. Yeah, that's great. And so having those, having conversations is really important with our loved ones or people who would make decisions on our behalf if we're unable to speak for ourselves. I find that the care we don't want is just as important to let people know as the care we do want. It's I do not want this, these hard lines, that is so important to have these conversations, and it will change. What I find now, what I think when I will be old and die, that, these assumptions, as long as I could see outside, I could hear the birds, I can have some fresh flowers, and maybe when I think I'm 88 and I die, that's not going to be enough for me. And so I'm going to make different decisions before that point, maybe different interventions of denying certain services or care. And so there's the, filling out our advance directives, and we can do that. It's a legal document. There's different ones online. The state of Alaska has its own document. Alaska Legal Services, they've got, they'll describe how to fill this out too. So I assist people in filling these out and explaining what some of this means if we check these boxes, or what it means to say I don't want this. So that advance directive has 2 parts. It's the living will, the type of care life-sustaining treatment options, like, I want to receive, like, antibiotics if this, I would like dialysis if that, I would like artificial nutrition and hydration, or maybe only for a certain amount of time. And so these options aren't like yes or no, there's such a big gray area, and it's also just preferences, because when something happens, it doesn't always go like we thought, and there's just so much more at play. So just having an idea of these preferences and documenting them is the most important thing we could do right now. And filling those out is free. We can take it to our bank. Usually they offer notary services. They would fill that out, notarize it for free generally. And then letting your loved ones know where this document is. And it's not locked up in a safe. You know, we could keep one in our car in case we're in a car accident. But we don't want copies everywhere. The other part of that advance directive is having our healthcare agent and saying, so it's a power of attorney for healthcare, like who we want speaking on our behalf if we're incapacitated. And so sometimes the best person isn't like our partner or a close family member, because it can get really emotional in these times, and we might want somebody different who knows and can make these decisions more easily. Alright, so then, yeah, before death, like creating these legacy projects, like practice writing our own obituary, maybe if like cooking was really important to you, creating a cookbook with all your favorite recipes, or finishing up a quilt, or like one is creating a playlist. Like I have one of these and I add to it. It is called Brady Death Date TBD, like my own playlist of music that is important to me, that I want my people around me to experience, like the highs and lows of emotions during my while I'm laid out and they're around me and celebrating my life. So yeah, different like memory books or gardens in our name. And then certain ones like while a death is, while we're dying, and creating these like vigil plans. And what I think of for this would be something that's like really sensual. It's like involving all of our senses of like how do we want the lighting to be? Because this can happen wherever the dying process occurs. This can happen in a hospital, assisted living facility, and we would want to talk to folks there to see if some of these things can happen, or in our own home. And this would be like the lighting that we want and don't want, the people who we want around us, or their role. Maybe we want someone to have to be whether we want touch or we don't. Or I want my pet on my bed, I want people to be quiet, or I want it to feel really dynamic in the space and people to be coming and going. We all have preferences towards this, and it's like just being able to reflect on this and share with others that we can make this feel and look really different than maybe what we've experienced with loved ones in the past. And so during a death, some of these words that I think of, it's like providing comfort, just the support and companionship, and just holding this space with other people. And then after a death has occurred, and when I think of this, a lot of this time, besides ritualizing, it's very individualized. We're memorializing this person, but I feel like this time after death is for us, those left grieving, and it's how busy with like our hands to be healing and knowing what to do with our love that we shared with this person. And so, yeah, if we're interested in, like, it's called like an after death care, and what we are able to do besides just like calling a funeral home and having our person, picked up within hours after death has occurred, that we have the right, it is legal, and we can get all into this on another topic. But for it to slow down, like the death is not a medical emergency when this is planned and when this is expected, and that we could really slow this down. And this could include like washing the body, washing our loved one's hair, anointing their body with oils, shrouding them, putting them in something that they wanted to wear, wrapping them in their favorite quilt or blanket, and having our loved one be with us for hours or even days after death before the next step. And even working with folks on like the legality of this, with like working in the municipality. If we're transporting a body, there's this burial transit paperwork to fill out. So a lot of times, we can use funeral homes for certain services, like a la carte, or we can use them fully, or not at all. And there's knowing this ahead of time, especially like if our loved one isn't at home, like what the policies are of the place that they're in, so that this just like flows easier at that time, and these conversations are had. Yeah, even like assisting with complex family dynamics, because there's, I think too, like being in Alaska, we've got a lot of family members who are out of state, or maybe we really don't have any family members here with us, and the role of our other like friends, and how they're there to support us in carrying out these wishes for us. Yeah. Anything right now? Okay. I know. I brought this, and I'm not equating this, but I had a pet of mine die over a year ago, and I really journaled a lot during that time, just to see, like, I really wanted to know, like, on this side of like dueling myself, companioning myself throughout my pet death, and like how it came up, because for me it's like it's a loss, and I don't need to, like we typically do with pet loss, minimize our loss and not have grieve publicly, not take time off, not share this loss with others, and so like I tabbed a few places here where it was like highlighting things about like how I felt towards grief, what my rituals were, like can I practice what I preach? This is what I want for myself. Like what does this look like when I've never done this, but I know how to do this? Like we all have this in us. We have all done this since the beginning of time with our loved ones. Like we know how to care for our own, and we can show up for each other at this time and learn and take it slow and be guided with like the spirit of that person, and also just like not know, but keep moving forward, and yeah, so no, like I would otherwise get into those contemplations, but I'll read some of the stuff that I wrote because it goes through some of these like offerings of like after death care, grief, and ritual, and I think that I find like ritual and ceremony to be really healing, and that was really what like I held on to those 4 days that after my bearded dragon died, and so I'll share a little bit of that. How much time do we have? When are we finished up here? 4:30. Okay, this one. And just a few of these things to read from. All right, so my beardie Maggie. I've always had dogs, and my kiddo wanted a bearded dragon, and for a reptile, I just wouldn't have felt like, I wouldn't have anticipated. I mean, I get chills. I don't know yet what it was, but this pet, she was, it's like I wrote, I lost my friend, not my pet. It wasn't just a pet. Whatever she was and symbolized and gave me, I am still learning from. And because of her death, I mean, really, I doted. I spent so much time with this little creature, and I had so much time after that. And the gift she gave me was starting to paint. I had discovered art and being creative, and now I have a gift, and that is how I use my time that I would have been spending with her. And it was sudden and violent and bloody, and I did not. It was unexpected, and it was really traumatic. It was not what I expected to walk into the morning I woke up to see her. So it was definitely shocking. And so, so my sweet Maggie, I journaled every day and just trying to understand, like that first day was a lot of shock. And I'm just going to read a little bit from day 2 where it felt like really like space and time were the theme. And so I picked flowers, greens, browns, reds, yellows, bloomed out rose. So she died in October. Bloomed out rose hips, birch, raspberry leaves, dandelion greens, what looked like hay and hay grass, bloomed fireweed, a beautiful arrangement. So as soon as my partner had left for work, I bawled. I felt alone. I did not want to be alone, and other times I do so that I could cry alone on my own. I want to go into the woods, dig a hole, stick my mouth deep in the earth, and scream from my gut into the center of the earth. Throat, gut, wrench, and retch. And like that's all I could feel was just like this center of me, just having to get so much stuff out, and just thinking of death and like loss and these waves that we can feel throughout time, and maybe we don't feel anything. Maybe we don't feel anything for years or days, and everybody has a very different experience, because when people die, there isn't always these perfect little situations or relationships with others. And regarding grief, like I said, so grief is the enormity of love and loss, swirling in my heart, finding somewhere to exit and pour into. Swells of love so overwhelming, I taste the sea on my cheeks as my heart flows over. It's like swells and oceans I've read about, where it's felt like I've heard of other people's grief, and I've read about this or felt it. You know, I haven't had close loved ones die since I was young. So to process this as an adult felt different. And so like I said, Maggie, I have lots of altars throughout the house, and I had the stones that I had in her cage, and I wrapped her up and laid her on these stones and had candles and flowers, and like every morning, like just different offerings for her. And this is what I would want for me, and this is what I would do for others, is just like tending to them. And so, yeah, I removed her from the yellow blanket that I now use as my watercolor. So I rinse out my brushes, and I have that blanket still. So that's part of my daily art practice, is she is there with me. So I removed her from the yellow blanket, bathed her, wrapped her in new cloth. She's back on her altar. I don't want to prepare to bury her, as I go through the actions of doing both what I want and don't want to do. There's still a drive to do, to put my hands and heart to work, because that's what I'd be doing if she were here. It's like I needed to stay busy, and that love did not go anywhere else, so I poured that back into her, and it looked different. And then lastly, she's teaching me about she's teaching me about how to care for loved ones, tending to death alongside death. As her companion in life, my companion at death. I am left with energy of death to attend to. I want to swim in the grief, the sadness. This too is time I will never get back with her, and I will tend to her in death as I have in life. So I needed to stay busy, and I needed to know what felt good for me, and like being outside, taking showers, like different smells, and just like slowing down and not demanding a lot from myself during that time. And I think that it's just important to for self-care and like what that looks like, because it is easy to distract, and in different ways how we distract ourselves from feeling or numbing out. Thanks for letting me read that, because I feel like that's some of these things are universal. These feelings of like, what do I do now, or like just rage and grief, or like overwhelming love or feelings. I felt a lot of regret, and that regret was turned into blame, and I blamed myself a lot, and so there's a lot of feelings, and okay. Anything else right now? Yeah.
I've kind of been working on this for a little while, talked to a couple of death doulas and gone to death cafes. And the one thing I'm not clear about is, my goal is I would love to have everything lined out so my kids don't have to think about any of it. Because they probably wouldn't be into the home funeral thing. So I would want to make sure somebody was there to facilitate it for them.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Like, I might still be here for 20 or plus years. You don't like sign up with somebody like yourself, right?
I know. Right.
Or do you just like have a list of people for them to contact afterwards, or?
Yeah. I know. All right. Like for what I wrote out, I put down people's phone numbers and names. Like if it were to happen today, to call, and what I want. Like I've got my legal documents that, like the advance directive, and then I have all these, like narratives and softer things and preferences of like what I want. And, my kids are 15 and 13, and I don't know, they wouldn't know what to do right now, but they know I want this, and it's like giving people flexibility too, because some folks aren't going to be comfortable with that, or I think having somebody facilitate and having these conversations ahead of time so that your family members are going to know like what to expect and hopefully on board with this, because it could get really weird.
Yeah.
If somebody's coming in and doing these things and they're like, no, like, ow, I would just write out your preferences and talk to the people who you want to carry these things out, and let the family members that that might be hesitant, like to give them a role, like tell them like, this is what I'd want you to do, while maybe other folks will do the heavy lifting and these other things that maybe that they wouldn't be so comfortable with, and to share that narrative with them. And so it could be things that we write down. We can make videos of ourselves saying these things so people really know, especially with like, we have our advanced directive, there's dementia directives, and making these videos to accompany those dementia directives are very important too. So I don't know if I answered it. Yeah, I don't think there's this is going to happen just the way you want it to.
I guess I'm thinking like, I just want everything paid for. So just you set money aside in an account maybe for them to use towards hiring a death doula.
Right. Yep. And then ensuring that they have access to that, whose names are on that, and how they can access it, and who. Yeah.
Just give them options to choose from.
Yeah. Like I'm going to keep talking about that advanced directive of like that healthcare agent, and you can have two, you can have an alternative, but I say too, like when you start having more than one person in like an equal role, then it can create more problems. So if you had your one main person that's like facilitating this, and then other folks taking roles that you've assigned, could be more helpful. Yeah, like that one person, and then that back up to that one person. Yeah.
So what you might offer is sitting with somebody and help walking them through a lot of this. Is that right?
Yep. And seeing like what. Yeah, like exactly what they would want at certain points, and who they'd want involved, and getting different ideas to reflect on, to for maybe somebody who also hasn't thought of this. So yeah.
So what if the person who is in their 90s is totally afraid of the whole thing, doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't have their paperwork? I would wonder how to work with the fear, to reduce the fear of the whole process in order to be able to start a conversation.
Yeah.
Repeat what she said.
Yeah, so Anne's question was, so say someone's like in their 90s, has a lot of fear surrounding this, doesn't have, say, their affairs in order, and how to approach that. And I would say, like, number one thing we'd learn in doula training or even with hospice is like you meet people where they are. I am not going to say, let's get this filled out today, like, are are they initiating? Are they the ones that are reaching out, or is it someone else that's like, this person needs to talk about this, you know? I find what I would do is, like, I would just be like, hey, you know, I just updated my advanced directive, and, you know, I would talk about some things that I want, or, like something that I've done recently, and then, like, you know, what do you think about that? Just starting on, like, a really easy question for them to answer, something that you know that they have a preference toward. Just like maybe starting there. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. But I feel like getting people to like just kind of planting that seed, and instead of like you directing and asking them, I'm gonna be like, hey, I just did this, or what do you think about that? Just asking questions so it doesn't feel like it's something that you're trying to get them to do. But it takes, and they might not get there, you know, that's like a lot of people, that's a lot of us. Not having anything written down, not having had these conversations, and it's difficult for people around them if they have people who are going to manage this after their death. And then a lot of us can be left with these feelings of like guilt and feel shame because we don't know what they really wanted, like are we doing what they wanted, and just it's tough for the people who are left. I think we know that.
For those who don't have anything in place,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm presuming this state is thrown into probate. Can you walk through that scenario a little bit? Are you familiar with it at all? In this state.
Right. I would say I'm not going to speak on that because that would really be like working with an attorney. Like, well,
From your experience.
yeah, your experience, like my experience, you know, I worked. Yeah. So his question was like, working with someone's estate that didn't have anything written down, maybe didn't have a trust in place. Like, does that go to probate? What happens in that situation? And yeah, I guess I can only assume that's going into probate. And these are like lengthy, costly events of not having it written down. So that advanced directive is that power of attorney for healthcare. So these are all of our healthcare wishes. And then we have our general power of attorney. And then we have our last will and testament, and dealing with like our estate. But that power of attorney, from what I understand, is still only in place while we're alive. And then once we die, like that's why we need these trusts, because then we have someone who is the who carries out what is written in the trust, so that it doesn't end up in probate. So there's different estate attorneys in town that that I would contact, and I know I've worked with one, and I've got a trust set up, because that's the part where I'm like, I'm not going to have tens or thousands of dollars just get hung up and go into the state because I didn't spend a couple thousand maybe to get this in order. And that's especially important if we have retirement, if we own any property, we've got children under 18, we're serving as a guardian for someone. So there's a lot of unique situations out there that I've heard with people, and it takes a lot of time to untangle things, and again to like put another layer of burden on it is when we don't have it in place, or we do, and we didn't update it, and the person that we're talking about, their dementia is like gone, and like that they have Alzheimer's, and now are unable to now sign and update these documents because they don't have the mental capacity. And then that's the limbo. And I know people just stuck in that and no attorney's gonna touch it. Yeah. So again, yeah, have these conversations, get things written down.
Have it done now.
Have these conversations when things change in our lives, of like other deaths, divorces, every few years. Let people know what we want.
Do you know of any organizations in Anchorage that work with elderly on this? I mean, I know I've contacted lawyers and they're really expensive.
Yeah.
But, for somebody who doesn't have a lot, it seems like a really expensive thing
Yes.
to have to
Yeah.
put money on.
Yeah.
If they don't have a lot to
Right.
then
Yep.
Is there anything at the senior center?
What is
Is
it?
there anything at the senior center?
Oh, a senior center. I don't know. I don't know what resources they have available there. But and I can get your info afterwards too. And yeah, I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. Like Alaska Legal Services or AlaskaLawHelp.com. They've got folks there that can help people out too. They do offer services without cost, but I don't know like how far, how much that they would work with somebody if it's a complex situation. Yeah.
Just a little piece to add is Hospice of Anchorage provide help in this regard? Can you contact their office?
I would, sure. I'm like, see what resources that they would have available. And
Final directives in this.
Yes. Yep, Hospice of Anchorage, they have a social worker on staff that helps their clients to fill out these directives and different paperwork, connecting people to different services. Yeah.
There's an Aging and Disability Resource Center in Anchorage. There's an Aging and Disability Resource Center in Anchorage. You can call and they have a resource officer or representative that gives you all that information. You could also contact the Alzheimer's Association. They have a resource educator available and they have all that information available.
Great. I think they're in the health department downtown.
The Alzheimer's Association or the Aging and Disability
Yeah.
Resource Center.
Yep.
It's downtown.
What were the 9 contemplations that Laurel had mentioned?
Right.
Yeah.
Like questions after death.
She's
or-
getting that, she's getting to that now.
We can do that. Okay. Ready for that? And then we can see if there's any more questions. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, okay, so the purpose of these, it's just more to like awaken, remember our purpose and just serve as like something to inspire. And got a little quote, it's this a Buddhist sutra, and I liked it for this one. It's, of all footprints, that of the elephant is supreme, of all meditations, that on death is supreme. Okay, so the 9 contemplations that follow offer a way to explore the inevitability of death and what is important to us in light of our mortality. The practice asks us to question what we are doing in our life at this very moment and to see what is important for us to do in order to prepare for and surrender to death. This awareness of impermanence can serve to deepen our commitment to living a life of value and meaning. The contemplations come from Atisha, an 11th century Tibetan Buddhist scholar who systematized the method for generating an enlightened mind. The practice is based on the work of Larry Rosenberg and I had this changed up and slightly abbreviated from Joan Halifax in her book, Being with Dying. So maybe if we're just sitting here, like uncross our legs, just like finding ourselves in this space. And after each contemplation, I'm just gonna hit the bowl. And if we feel like it, maybe just closing down our eyes or gazing down towards the floor. And just take a few breaths here in this space. And maybe on that first breath, just exhaling and lengthening the exhale. And on the next inhale, just filling our belly, feeling that breath expanding into the ribs, up into the collarbone. Exhaling, maybe dropping our shoulders away from the ears. On that final breath, exhaling, just feeling that exhale traveling down through the legs and out through the feet, just feeling grounded in this space. And so from this place of safety and relaxation, I invite you to please consider these truths. So the first contemplation of death, all of us will die sooner or later. Death is inevitable. No one is exempt. The most noble person who ever lived, the wealthiest human alive, the most humble person will also die. Death is an inescapable outcome of life. No one can avoid this fate. Reflect on the profound equality that death bestows upon all, rendering meaningless all distinctions of wealth, status, and relationship. Do not lose the opportunity to be with the simple fact that I too will die. Watch what the mind tries to do to avoid being present with the inevitability of death. Can I face this truth? Death is inevitable. This is our first contemplation. The second contemplation. Our lifespan is decreasing continuously. Each breath brings us closer to death. Our movement toward death never stops. Consider the relentless passage of time and the brevity of life in the grand scheme of our universe. We are living in the dash, somewhere in between our birth dates and the day we will die. How might I live more fully today, in this moment, and in every moment amidst this truth? Our lifespan is decreasing continuously. This is the second contemplation. The third contemplation. Death will indeed come, whether we are prepared, whether or not we are prepared. We may spend time contemplating death and preparing for our spiritual needs, the needs of our logical mind, our physical bodies, our dependence, our belongings, or we may not. Death does not discriminate and will come regardless of whether our affairs are in order. It is wise to be mindful of death and to use time, energy, and resources to prepare. When we are not in active crisis mode, we can make decisions with authenticity and integrity rather than panic and fear. What do I need now to feel prepared for my inevitable death? What do I seek now to find peace with the spontaneity of death? Death will come, whether or not we are prepared. This is the third contemplation. fourth contemplation. Our lifespan, like that of all living beings, is not fixed. Human life expectancy is uncertain. Death can come at any moment, sleeping or waking, while we are healthy or in pain. Think of the 106 people who die every minute on this planet, the nearly 6,400 people who die every hour, the 153,000 people who die every day. Approximately 7 people have died in the 4 seconds since I started sharing this contemplation. How many of these humans really thought that they were going to die today? When it is time for me to die, it will happen in an ordinary human moment just like this one. How much time do I have left? Our lifespan, like that of all living beings, is not fixed. Consider this contemplation. The fifth contemplation. Death has many causes. Contemplate the infinite ways in which death can manifest, from accidents to illnesses, conditions inherited from family and inherent in being a modern human, heartache, heart disease. There are endless causes that can lead to death. Allow the mind to consider these possibilities without avoidance. One way or another, whether I have spent precious energy worrying about a potential condition or never saw it coming at all, it will still have the same end result. How may I find comfort in the unknown and release any hold-on preferences for my death? There are many conditions that bring death, and the forces that sustain life are few. Death has many causes. Consider this fifth contemplation. The sixth contemplation. Our human body is fragile and vulnerable. One breath, one moment, one mistake can bring life to a surprising and rapid end. Life is precarious and requires many interwoven systems functioning with precision to continue. At any time, for any reason, and sometimes for no reason at all, these systems may fail. Attending to my inhalation, I deepen my appreciation for everything that has functioned, allowing me to experience today. Softening into my exhalation, I acknowledge that death is not a failure, but an inevitability of my physical form. Our human body is fragile and vulnerable. This is the sixth contemplation of death. The seventh contemplation. My loved ones cannot keep me from death. I may turn to loved ones in the time of hardship, but even they are ultimately powerless in preventing death. There are limitations to our attachments, and clinging to them may make dying more difficult. The inevitability of death cannot be altered by even the strongest bonds. Holding this thought in mind, I exercise non-grasping. I ask myself, what will actually help me at the moment of my death? My loved ones cannot keep me from death. This is the seventh contemplation. contemplation. At the moment of death, material resources will be of no use to me. My cherished belongings, my stores of money must all be left behind. No matter how much I have accumulated, how carefully my belongings have been preserved, nothing will help me avoid death. Furthermore, my possessions must be redistributed after my death. I will have to let go of everything. With this in mind, I contemplate how I may release my attachment to my possessions now. What do I wish to invest in for the remainder of my days? How might I leave a lighter footprint when I am gone? At the moment of death, material resources will be of no use to me. Consider this contemplation. The ninth contemplation. My own body cannot help me at the time of my death. Despite the care and attention invested into the body, it will too be lost at the moment of death. All the exercise and rest, nourishment or abuse, self-love, feelings of overwhelm will come to an end. My most intimate companion, the vehicle through which I have traveled this lifetime, from conception to death, must ultimately be left behind. I am dependent upon my body now, as it allows me to breathe and exist in this present moment, and yet I will join every human ancestor before me in letting go of this vessel. How might I better prepare for this departure? What can I do to strengthen my awareness and my capacity to surrender? Inhaling, I find refuge in my earthly body. Exhaling, I practice release. My own body cannot help me at the time of death. This is the ninth contemplation. These 9 contemplations allow us to confront our inevitable end. I invite you to notice which contemplations might be challenging and which you can approach with ease. These are the 9 contemplations. Death is inevitable. My lifespan is decreasing continuously. Death will come regardless of whether I am prepared for it. My lifespan is not fixed. Death has many causes. My human body is fragile and vulnerable. My loved ones cannot keep me from death. My material resources cannot help me at the moment of my death. And my own body cannot help me at the time of death. Consider these truths deeply. Allow these contemplations to invite a profound awakening to the existential realities of life and death. May they guide you toward a more mindful existence, honoring the connection to all humans who have died and have contemplated death before you. I invite you to deepen your breath, taking a long, full exhale, and creating some movement back into the body. slowly opening up the eyes if they were closed. And just anyone practiced this before, been introduced to these contemplations together like this? Yeah. Anybody want to share anything?
Wow. Mm. Thank you.
Joanne's book is great. That's when I first got introduced to the Nine Contemplations. It's really, really good. Got a beautiful cover, Being with the Dying. Highly recommend it.
Could you repeat what it's called?
So it's called Being with Dying, and I scoured. I was like, where is my copy? And I think I left it somewhere. And so, but it's a really good book with lots of different practices in there. And then at the end of each chapter, there's just different contemplations, meditations, and practices. Yeah, there's other ones that are like really good to consider, and it's just things that I never knew were out there, and I want to share it. Like when like the just like our the dissolution of our self and body, and it goes through the elements of like air, fire, water, earth, yeah, and you know, there's different ones out there, but I mean, that was incredibly powerful for me, really not being able to conceptualize not being here, and like physically and all the ways, like that practice, that was a good experience to go through. And you know, even with some of these like on our phones, and we could record ourselves and guide ourselves through some of these. Something I'd encourage, you know, just hearing our own self guide ourselves through some of these practices could be really powerful too. So, thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Good job, Lynn. Thank you.